introductions and the like.
Looks like she's frozen, Beth, so go for it.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're excited to be sharing this information today. The Student Network Support Subcommittee thought it would be a good idea to do a little presentation on From Data to Display, how to create impactful scientific research posters to especially support those students and others who have submitted an abstract and will be presenting posters at SNRS this February in Austin, Texas. However, whether you're presenting there or somewhere else, we hope this information will be helpful to you. My name is Beth Neese, and I work at the University of South Carolina. And presenting with me is Dr. Lynn Rowe and Dr. Ashley Rivera. And I'll let them introduce themselves when we get to a slide that shares where they're sharing information. We each are trying to share a little bit of our expertise with you, and hope that you find that helpful. And we do want this to be interactive. So please chime in if you have great ideas or things that you've tried that worked well for your posters. Next slide. Is Ashley still on and able to drive?
Good question.
Ashley, are you on and able to drive? We'll give her just a quick minute, and if not, I can pull them up. But I know she had made some edits, so let's just give her a quick minute. I don't think I've ever done a webinar without some technical challenges, and I'm sure you guys are the same. Lynn, you want to introduce yourself while we're on a pause?
Sure. I'm Dr. Lynn Rowe. I'm an associate professor at Advent Health University. I'm actually in Orlando, Florida, in case you wonder. And I teach in the undergraduate BSN program. So, yep, member of SNRS and done some poster presentation there. Also been to WIN and done some poster presentation. So hopefully this will be fun. I'm excited that there's a bunch of posters coming this time to convention. It'll be fun to meet up and see what everybody's doing. I think posters are a great way to do it, you know.
Absolutely. Ashley, do we have you back?
Doesn't look like she's back.
All right. Well, in that case, I will attempt to share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Could you please make that larger?
I sure can.
Thank you.
All right, there we are. Are you seeing the slide or the slide transition?
Looks like the slide transition.
Okay. I'm going to do it like this. All right. Let's keep her moving here. Um, So hopefully all of you all are considering going to the conference in Austin on February 18th through 20th. Just a reminder to sign up if you haven't. It's always a very good time and some excellent information shared at the conference. Our presentation today is again going to be about how to go from data to impactful scientific posters for research. And our goal is to guide you through the essential components of design strategies for confidently sharing your research at the professional meeting. So by the end of this presentation, we're hoping that you'll be able to feel confident in making a scientific poster, be able to apply visual design principles that make your message clear and engaging, as well as use strategies to connect with your audience when you are presenting at the conference. So we're going to get started by thinking about why posters are so impactful and why we do this at conferences. And the main reason is to communicate your research early, because often it takes a while to get a journal article published. And so when you've finished your data collection and your data analysis, you want to share that information. And so posters are a great way to engage with a scientific audience and to have early conversations about your findings, your next steps. Posters really help to facilitate a discussion and networking with other researchers that may be doing similar work. And it also serves as a permanent visual record of your work prior to the opportunity that you may have to publish. Important opportunity. And I think one of the most important things is that it invites conversation. So unlike providing a podium presentation, your poster remains a visible and tangible record of your early work, and it's something that others can revisit. So really important that clarity and design are planned for so that your work can really be impactful and carry you forward. So when you're planning your poster, you really want to stick with your abstract. What you wrote in your abstract should be reflected in your poster. That's what the conference is expecting. And so that's really important to make sure you're following your abstract. You want to clarify your main message and make sure that whether your poster is digital or printed, that the format influences how your content flows. So thinking about that format and what is the best format for your particular content. And a lot of us are limited to the specific format or of our university or the template from our university. But there's often some opportunity for creativity in how you put that together. So you want to make sure you're thinking about your audience, the particular audience at our conference, nurse researchers from the South Eastern United States. And you want to make sure that you're designing your key messaging and your take-home points. A lot of times using the conference theme can be super helpful in engaging with your audience and really providing some flow for the week. And you want to choose your poster size and formatting, whether it's landscape or portrait, based on what you know about the conference and how the poster session will be set up. And so usually they do provide you with some information about the size of the boards. And I think when we get into the formatting section of this lecture, Ashley is going to talk a little bit more about that. So for content development, I always try to use the storytelling arc because your poster should really be more than just a data dump. It should really be an opportunity for you to tell your story about why this research was important to you, what your findings were, and then what is the next step. So, you don't want to just make your poster about the data. You want to think about the story. And so, your introduction is kind of like the beginning. And then you have some rising action with it, which is your methods. The climax is very often your results, but you don't want to leave people hanging. You want to make sure you have this falling action. You want to make sure you have a conclusion, next steps, so that you don't leave your audience hanging. So when you're thinking about your content, think about how you can tell that story using bullet points and keeping your language clear and accessible. When you're designing your poster, you're going to hear more about this later, but less is often more. So remember, the story is from the data, but the data is not the story. You must have a so what and a what's next, because a story without a conclusion or a call to action and a call to action will really just leave your audience hanging. So the data is often sometimes the most exciting thing to us, but the rest of the story is also very, very important. This is a poster I did a long time ago that really took the whole storytelling thing to the next level. And this is when I was working for a health system and I didn't have to follow the poster template requirements of a university. And so I just unleashed it a little bit and really took the storytelling arc to another level using the Once Upon a Time, a Magnet Hospital not too far from Richmond, Virginia, unleashed the power of storytelling on nursing quality improvement. And this is really about how we used a mock code to impact nursing documentation. And for this particular poster, I was sharing how we used a real case that was 7 years expired. Our real attorneys who came to the hospital worked with our nursing professional development group to develop this simulated trial, and we had, I think, over 300 nurses participate in this, and I would love to say it lasted forever, but for a while we had a pretty significant improvement in our specimen labeling situation. So it was impactful, and I talked to a lot of people, I think, because sometimes when you're going through a poster session, everything looks kind of the same because everybody's using, the same kind of template. And this really caught people's attention. So I'm sharing this because you may not be able to do this based on the requirements of your organization, but visual appeal will create that opportunity to have a conversation and allow you to tell your story, which is the most important part of what we're trying to do, that networking, sharing. And I had calls from several people who worked with their hospital attorneys to create similar opportunities for their nursing staff to see what it looks like when your documentation is called into question in the courtroom. I ended up having a lot of great conversations with people all over the country following this poster presentation. All right. Lynn, I think you're going to take it from here.
Yep, got a couple for you. So the next piece, so posters are kind of a fun thing to do. I find it a lot more entertaining than trying to write hundreds of pages for manuscripts, right? A little bit less time involved in that, but it's really, really important when you're creating a poster to really think about what you want to share. A lot of times people think that they have to present a poster that has their final results. I'm here to tell you that sometimes sharing preliminary findings, initial phases of studies is really helpful, because poster presentation, like we've said, is a storytelling process, but a great way to get feedback, especially if you're stuck or having some challenges in your study, for people to talk to you about it and help you out. Because sometimes once you put it up there, people can say, oh, there's where your challenge lies, and you've missed it the entire time. I think the big thing, though, is to be sure that you're always following some kind of template. Now, the template we have listed here is kind of the standard that you'll see for most places. And this was one that I actually used in graduate school. And I always thought, posters didn't really have a whole lot of process until I was required to do it. And it's important to really think about these sections because your poster can get very busy and very hard to read. One of the things that with this section is you want to keep it very simple language, make it readable, and make it look pretty. I mean, you don't want to have a lot of dead space, but you also want to make sure people can actually read it and pay attention. You can usually tell a poster that is difficult to read because people will just walk right past it in a poster presentation, because you have to remember posters are designed to draw you in, right? Just like when you go to a car dealer, little signs with numbers on it that you like, you're going to draw yourself in. So looking at this, you will see that as well. So like normal, you have a title, and your title may or may not be the actual name of your research. It might be something just to capture what you're talking about. A slight introduction, methods, of course, like usual, results, discussion, references, etc. The key here is to make sure that whatever abstract you submitted, that this matches, because that's really, really important when you're getting judged, especially for posters. You want to make sure that there's not like a huge disconnect for the two items. And then think about it visually. I think about this as a poster is like a book. If you're somebody who likes pictures and likes to follow things, a lot of graphics is kind of nice, and text is what you minimize. And I think that that's one of those things that's hard because you got to make sure you give everybody credit for it. But you want to make sure that it's definitely legible. So when you create this, unfortunately, you can't create a poster and print it every single week, right? That's a challenge. So most of these templates are designed as PowerPoint or like an Excel format that you can do, and that you can go in and put your information. Pay close attention to how much space you have. If it looks cluttered on the PowerPoint slide, it's going to look just like that, but in a bigger format. And that's always the struggle, because sometimes you'll move things. It looks great on the PowerPoint. You put it on a 4x6 and it absolutely looks terrible. So you may have to do lots of revision to that piece as you go. And especially if you're going to do that, it gets expensive unless you're lucky and have somebody who will pay for your poster. So do a lot of planning before you go to printing to do that. And the format is, again, based on where you are. When I went to school, it was a set format. The university I'm at actually follows the political institutions format. And their whole goal, and the reason we do that, is we want people to see how much we're doing. We want people to stop and say, oh, look at what this school is doing. And when you go to presentations, they don't usually put all of the same school together. They mix them up. So it's nice to have the same look. So you can say, hey, wow, there's 10 posters from UCF. Hey, there's 10 posters from Johns Hopkins. And how do you know that? It's by color. So it makes it very, very easy to find that information as you go through the place. So if you go to the next slide for me. So based on that piece, included a couple of posters that we've actually done. One at the top is from a different conference that I've been to. The bottom is actually one that we've presented from Advent Health. And you can see they all have a little different thing associated with them in regards to the focus. So some pictures, some actual data, and then just some graphics. The key here is to find the colors that work. Don't use a lot of light colors. Nobody will ever see them. And be sure that, it's not going to take somebody more than about 5 minutes to read through your poster. If you have too much to read, people lose interest and move on. One of the other things that I've found when I've gone, if my poster is a little busy, I take my abstract with me and I keep it available so somebody can actually look at it as they're looking at my poster to take notes if they have questions on the poster. And that kind of helps because there's so many things when you go to these conferences. There's usually hundreds of posters in different sessions, and after a while they begin to look alike. And so you want to be sure that you have some way to go back and actually look at what's there. But you can see that these may or may not attract your attention. I find graphics and data are my thing. Other people, it's the pictures and the people that are on the poster that that make it interesting. So no right or wrong way other than having too much that you can't see it. But again, it's going to be personal preference and then of the conference. And the key is to really be sure that you follow whatever the conference tells you is the template to use, and specifically related to size, because conferences have quite a bit of variability in what size they're going to give you. I've seen as small as 2x6. Most of them are a 4x6 or a 5x6. And they tell you what it should be made of. But you want to make sure that you have the right thing, because otherwise, if you don't meet the criteria, they won't hang your poster for you. And that's kind of disappointing if you travel all that way and wind up not being able to share a poster at the end of the day. So those are my two to start with. I think Ashley has the next for the more details related to the visuals. Did she get back on?
Yep.
Cool.
Hey, Ashley's
I gave
back.
up on my computer and went with my phone. I was like, thank God for smartphones. Yeah. Oh, Florida, we do things here differently.
Yep.
So looking at visual design principles. Now, the importance of using color strategically is, I can't stress how important that is. Because when you're looking at your templates, and you feel sometimes when you look at these templates that there's no opportunity to get creative. The thing is that as you add in bright colors, as you look in colors to draw into the most important part of your findings, that's what's going to keep people attached to your poster. And if there's a lot of information on your slides, it's really hard to see what the important part is. Another thing that's a really big, this is kind of a pet peeve of mine as somebody who likes to judge poster competitions, is alignment and space for balance. You got to think of this as a visual work of art a little bit, right? You have to think about the idea that somebody's walking by, there's 100 posters. How are they going to stop and see yours? Well, it's got to look like something that they can read in a very short period of time, that they don't have to take time out of their day and sit there for half an hour and try to understand what you're saying. When something is visually appealing, that's when people are going to walk up and want to know more about it. The other thing that's a pet peeve of mine is when the text is so tiny and small that I feel like I'm standing next to this huge 6x8 poster, but I literally think I need to put on extra reading glasses to get to the print because the print is so small on it. So make sure that the text is readable. Make sure that there's a good contrast. Don't do, very subtle light blue on a dark blue background. Really get that white and black contrast, or something else that makes sense, right? Something that stands off of each other. Can you go to the next slide, please? So I want you to look at these two posters. Looking at these posters, one of these looks like something that I could read very quickly, and one of them just looks like essays, right? So most of us that are in academia are also in research, right? So when we're looking at these, I don't go to conferences to read essays, all right? I do that enough on my own in academia. So when I'm looking at these posters, I go, oh my gosh, the right side, that looks like an essay. There's no white space. There's no pictures. There's nothing visual there. I'm a real simple person. All right. I like pictures. I like images. I like to see all that white space that's on the left side. Your title should be bigger than the rest of your poster, so it pulls you in. Have your school's name up there. Those templates are so important. But even though you're given a template, there's a lot of creativity on how to use those templates and to make sure that template stays balanced. But make sure you've got those minimum ingredients too. So you've got those minimum ingredients. You've got your introduction. You've got your design. You've got to know what the research findings are. Where could I get more information? References. These are all very important ingredients to have on your slides. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at our visual design principles, the other thing is not to get too busy. So really there should be consistency on your page. On your poster, there should be 2 to 3 sizes of fonts, right? Make sure the fonts is something you can read. We don't need to be an old English style, right? No Disney cursive. Something that's legible, something that we can read. Arial, Times New Roman, those are great solid comebacks. Why? Because they're readable. There's something I can see up close and at a distance. All right, use visual hierarchy. Make things like titles bigger than the rest of the text on your page. That way we can know where the important pieces pull out. Leave white space, have that breathing room. All right, make sure that you give your research breathing room, let it speak for itself. Don't overwhelm us with things. Next slide. So now I want you to look at this too, because this takes it to another level. Is there enough words on this slide for me to understand what's going on the left-hand side? So on the left-hand side, there's a lot of pictures, but can I understand those pictures? Is there enough information there? And on the right-hand side, I want to see the good mix. You see how there's still a lot of white pages, but there's lots of other pieces there to help me understand that multi-level processing, right? So we have to think about this idea that we've got a variety of learners in the room with us. So looking at a variety of ways to look at information, that helps us understand what your point is. When I look at that poster on the left, I'm going to have a lot of questions because I may not understand the diagrams. So there's a fine balance. You can't have too many pictures. You want enough pictures to create interest, but you don't want to have so many pictures that you forget all the words. All right, next slide, please. All right, and common mistakes that we want to avoid. We want to avoid these ideas that we have on here, right? We want to make sure that we can really see what's going on when we're looking at our poster. So these are just some common mistakes that we see all the time when you're looking at these poster competitions and when you're looking at things that are on there. And I can see Sarah doing a little woohoo because this definitely happens. Too much crowding. Again, if it's not something that I can see and that's something that's just too much on the page, I just walk right by. Inconsistent formatting. If there's bizarre words and letters, even within the same sentence, and there's weird pieces that are capitalized, I go, what is going on? Right? What kind of formatting do they do? These poor color contrast, low resolution. And then again, that story principle, that lack of narrative. If I don't see what's going on, if I feel like I'm reading something that Yoda had put up on together, I'm going to get a little confused, right? I'm going to get looking at this poster going, I can't even understand the words that you wrote down on this page, right? If I have to stand there and try to process mentally your poster, chances are that's not what a poster should do. Right? A poster should be something that's inviting and tells me your story, tells me your research, because I want to hear it. It's just hard if I can't read it. Next slide. All right. So always when you use graphics, try to make them effective. Include graphics that help tell your story. All right. They don't have to be pictures just for pictures. Use visuals that support, that don't replace your message, right? Don't think you can replace all the words with pictures. But if it helps communicate what's going on, then that's what's important. And I think the next slides are back.
Yes, so this is about photos. So photos can be expensive if you're trying to buy photos that are very specific for your poster. I like to use simulated patient photos. So in this particular photograph here, this nurse, I think it's kind of cool because you can see her name badge here that says RN in the mirror. So this was an awesome designed photo. This is her dad, and he came to the hospital, to her nursing unit, to pose in this photo. We put an armband on him, put a patient gown on him, and this was for a poster, a research study where we looked at patient hand hygiene. You know, we always pay attention to healthcare hand hygiene, and we say patients should tell their healthcare workers to wash their hands, but we don't think about washing the patient's hands or having the patients wash their hands. And we had amazing results in an ICU unit when we instituted intentional patient hand hygiene. And so we needed a patient for the poster, but all of the HIPAA requirements to have a picture of a patient was challenging. And finding a already crafted photo of a patient washing their hands was nearly impossible because there's not a whole lot in the literature about patient hand hygiene. And so there's just not a lot of pictures to go with that. So everybody should be working on this in your facility. This was a quality improvement project, and I guarantee you can get some decreased results on your hospital-acquired infections if you just start washing your patient's hands. But back to the photo. So for the poster, what we did was we staged this, and we've also used this in a journal article. The great thing about it is that you absolutely want to get a photo release because this looks like a patient. So I designed a photo release for a simulated patient. And it's a whole lot easier to get that published and to use that when you know the person and you have staged the photo yourself and it's not a real actual patient. So I highly recommend this. I've done it multiple times. You can correct for the lighting, the positioning. You can do this awesome mirror thing here with the badge. avoids all the HIPAA violations, eliminates the risk of unintentional disclosing protected health information. So much easier to share and use in multiple different applications. So highly recommend that. Here's a couple other ones. I love to star in my own poster. So this is me and my aunt, and she actually used to be a model. So she was so happy to help with this. She had Parkinson's disease, and this was a patient mobility poster that I did, a study that I did, and it was also published in the journal article as well. And just fantastic opportunity to stage it just how I wanted it to be. Same here. We staged this this was a student I had, Western Carolina University, and she had graduated, and we actually staged this in her church at the Welcome Center because we didn't have a good simulation of opportunity, but a sim center is a great place to set these things up. I will tell you, you want to make sure you're paying attention to detail, wearing gloves if you're supposed to wear gloves, and really paying attention to the details. Those can sometimes get away from you because it's not real, but you want it to be a real professional representation of what you're trying to create. So again, great opportunity to avoid the cost of purchasing a picture or the licensing issues, and definitely much easier than a real patient photo is from a HIPAA standpoint. Has anybody out there used simulated patient photos, and any tips? You can unmute yourself because I can't look at the chat while I'm also presenting in this format. But any other tips or suggestions, or anybody used simulated patient photos for posters or journal articles?
I have with patients with ventilators. So I was recently speaking to a colleague. He's going to be doing a presentation. By the way, this is Brian from the University of Central Florida. And she was trying to find a way for her presentation to be more creative. So I said, find a willing respiratory therapist or nurse on your unit and take a picture of that later.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. That's a ventilator is a little bit more challenging one. So thank you. That's an excellent segue into my slide on free images. So here's a couple of websites for you, and we'll make sure you have these slides following the presentation. But the NIH has some excellent bio art with some photos. You can get X-ray images, CT scans. You can also get pictures of patients. Like this, as well as photos. This second site here is an excellent source, as well as this is a LibGuide from a university that shares these as well as additional sites. And so your university may even have good sources for you as on a LibGuide within your university. So lots of great free places to get images. Of course, Canva, Unsplash, Creative Commons has some good medical images, as well as these three down here. Make sure that if you are getting the image from somewhere else and you're not creating it yourself, that you are able to document especially if it's a photo of a person and it looks like a patient, that you have good documentation, especially if you're submitting it to a journal, that it is not a patient, and you need to make sure you cite it correctly for where you got it from, and make sure that it does have a Creative Commons license or is free to use. Any tips on images? Anybody else have a good source for free images?
I wouldn't say it was a sort, maybe, well, I got mine on Canva I downloaded, and I'm
Okay,
studying, I'm a PhD student at Texas Women's University. And for my presentations, I'm studying young adults that age out of foster care. And on Canva, I found a young girl homeless in a tent holding a sign. All I did was turn 18. And I've used that on every presentation for for school, for my school assignments, but I would like to do something like that for a poster presentation at a professional conference because it's very attention grabbing and it creates an emotional
Yes.
response.
Yes.
And it is a true to life picture of what's happening in that population.
Yeah, that sounds like a very powerful image. And I think that's what one of the important aspects of using images is that they do really elicit the emotional response and they draw people in to really create the opportunity for that conversation.
Do you have any other advice about using powerful images in that way that get your title across and the importance of your study across without?
Well, I think you said it, finding an image that really does elicit that emotional response. I think you could definitely overdo it by having too many images on your poster. I agree with Lynn and Ashley that you want to make sure you're demonstrating the data and telling the
Yes.
story, and it's not just all about the pictures and the images. And I think one image of like a photo or something is more powerful than two or three.
That's the only one I use because when I first saw it, it took my breath away.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's all
That's what you want. You want an image
yes.
like that will take your breath away and really, um, tell the essence of the story.
Thank you.
Okay, so can't talk about developing a poster or developing anything else without the talking about the elephant in the room, which is getting help from AI. And so I think AI is a great opportunity for brainstorming as you're beginning to look at formatting ideas, flow, storytelling. So there's a lot of great AI tools that you can use for image creation, design, layout suggestions. I love AI for brainstorming, but I like to own my own creativity in the end. So I think that's important is considering ethical use of AI and also not replacing your own voice. You always want to make sure you're verifying accuracy and maintaining those ethical standards and ensuring appropriate copyright when using AI. A couple of graphic design and images from text that I've used have been from BioRender and Napkin. And I'll show you what this looks like a little bit, but you can basically take your abstract and plug it in and it'll create an image that would go with your study. And so again, I use this primarily for brainstorming. I haven't loved everything that's come out of either one of those, but I think it's often given me a different perspective and a different way to think about the work. So this is an exact example from Napkin, and Napkin is kind of more of a business tool than a research tool. But a lot of my research is related to nursing leadership type of issues. And so it very often is helpful in coming up with creation of, concept images that describe the research. So here's an example, building a supportive nursing community. And this talks about some elements of connection, resources, and community. And basically, I took an abstract and I plugged it in there, and this is what was created. You can then chat with it with Napkin and say, I don't like this, and change, the information you're putting in to change the image. Here's another one. I'm gonna pull this up a little bit, make this a little bit bigger while we're on the slide together so you can see it. But basically, I have an abstract that is a qualitative study I'm working on, and I'm looking at people who sleep in a recliner. There's a lot of people with COPD and heart failure who sleep in a recliner every night to help them breathe easier and get some actual sleep. But that's really challenging for travel because hotels don't routinely provide recliners. And so I interviewed 20 hotel managers about the feasibility and barriers to providing a recliner. And so I plugged that abstract into Napkin and it kind of created this image for me. So recliners in hospitality, here are the main concepts that kind of came out of the study, and a nice little graphic to kind of get started with. I don't know that I'll stick with that, but that's what Napkin can do for you from an abstract. Anybody else use any other tools for creating graphic images like this from text?
Cool.
Any other AI tools you've discovered? Chat GPT will do it, not as sophisticated as these. Copilot will do a little bit in PowerPoint. Canva, Gamma.app is another one I've just played around with a little bit. But BioRender and Napkin are two that I particularly have gravitated to. Okay, I want to talk about this a little bit. Most of us can't do this because of the requirement to use the university template, although I did see John Hopkins use this at the last SNRS conference. And I know we have somebody from John Hopkins on the call, so curious if this is still an option for you all. So Mike Morrison has a great video, and it's linked down here. It's actually on USC Davis's LibGuide page, which makes me think that maybe they've embraced it as well. But the concept is that for his poster, his suggestion is make the title really big so that as I'm cruising by the posters, I can see it. And then if it's something I'm interested in, I can, come chat with you and you can explain it to me as I stand there. And I can see these details that are maybe a lot smaller than we're used to on posters. I can move in and talk about it with you at a little closer distance. And then I can hit this QR code for some more additional details. And his thought is that, a lot of times you're going through the conference poster session and you may be in a hurry and you just want to try to find something that is that you're looking for specifically, or research that's similar to your research. And the titles are so small that it's hard to really do that. And you don't really want to engage with somebody unless it's something that you're really interested in, because you don't have a lot of time. And so you don't want to get too close. And so his video is very entertaining about how he developed this design. But curious if anybody's university, or if you're not at a university, a health system, has embraced this template, or if anybody has seen this at other conferences. Anybody?
Yes, at the International Nurse Editors Conference, Mike Morrison was one of the presenters, and he has a YouTube website that's incredible.
Yes, you can get some of his templates from there. I like it because, again, usually I'm pretty, I love the poster sessions, but I find that it's too much information and it's hard to read and find the titles that I want to stop and talk to somebody about. So I like the concept of it. I've never had the guts to do it. When I had the opportunity, I played around with it a little bit, and then I kind of went back to the traditional poster template because I just didn't have the guts to do it. But I really like it. I think it's interesting, and I think it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
I actually used this template for my upcoming poster at SNRS. So
excellent. I will come find you.
Yeah, everybody come find me. Listen to the poster presentation.
We're all
excellent. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback you get. So fantastic. What university are you from, or what hospital system?
I'm at USC. I'm a PhD student there.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll definitely come see you.
Okay,
fantastic.
That sounds great.
All right. Anybody else?
It's good.
Okay. Keep your eyes out for these. It'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
And Beth, I just want to add for some of the pictures. I know it's always hard. And I think one of the things I've learned having to try to do posters more often is to start to keep a file of pictures that you have. So especially if you're doing simulated pictures, you want to make sure that you have them, because if you're picking as a PhD faculty, ideally you're going to kind of keep your research going in some kind of a trajectory. You want to keep those pictures so that you might be able to use them again, or to create something in the future, because there's nothing worse than you find a picture you like, You want to use it again and you don't have it. And then it gets taken down from the website or something happens to it. So I would recommend that you kind of create yourself a file, I have one that says visuals for posters. And then that way I make them by groups, so like people or supplies. So the example that was there for a mechanical ventilation and a patient being intubated, that's a perfect scenario because we have mannequins that can do that. So we can create that. And then I don't have to go find something to show people. I also use my students, since I have undergrad students that like to learn stuff. They like to come and play in the lab. So we actually use them as a simulated patient, which is nice because they're doing the skills. We can actually take the pictures. But I think that will save you a lot of time when you start beginning to present. And especially if you're going to do multiple posters, because you can't duplicate exactly that poster for a different conference, you want to make sure that you have some variety. So you can look and say, oh, I've already used these. Here's some new pictures to cycle through. And then if somebody wants to borrow your picture too, you can send it to them, right? So it makes it easier. I never did that initially. So I spent a lot of time having to work on my visuals when I would make posters. And now that I have them, it makes it a little quicker to kind of click and upload. So that's always kind of one of those live and learn if you haven't done it along the way. So as we've talked about, posters are definitely a way to get things done, but it's also a place where a lot of mistakes happen. As Ashley said, there's nothing worse than when you look at a poster, lots of misspellings, lots of things that happen. And as we talked about, there's always the rules of how much space can you use and how should you hang them. So one of the things is like you want to check it 5 billion times before you actually print it. And then after you print it, compare it, because it's definitely going to make you look bad if you don't have it right. And I think a lot of times when we do things and it's a template that's in a PowerPoint, when you create it in a bigger size, it doesn't always look the same and the balance gets off. So you really want to make sure that you go back to the original piece that showed you what you should have in there and make sure that it actually creates that white space that Ashley was talking about. The other thing is make sure whoever you're taking it to can actually print it in the color that you need. There's a lot of places at the university that they won't do it in color. So it's in black and white. So you're going to have to rethink what you put on your poster, right? Sometimes just doing a black and white poster can have more impact than all the color, but you have to make sure that it looks right. For our university, we have 3 shades of blue. It's blue, green, light green, and whatever. And they're very specific for where things have to be. So when we print them, we have to make sure that it comes out the right colors. Otherwise, we can have copyright infringement with our identifiers for our health institutions. So it's important for you to take a peek at that and see what's there. The other thing is once you print it, make sure it meets the size dimension, and then look at the kind of paper that it's printed on or what material you're using. I've been to several international conferences where I have to travel overseas. And one of the things that I've seen from a lot of researchers from like the Philippines and Korea is that they don't use paper, they actually use cloth to print their posters, because part of the challenge too is you printed this big poster out, you got to transport it, and sometimes it gets damaged in the transport. So what they've gone to is cloth so they can fold it and transport it with them and then put it up on a board. It's kind of an interesting way. I don't think about it as a shirt, but that's exactly what they do. They bring a steamer and they put it up and it looks all nice and pretty, because a 4x6 poster is a pretty big tube to carry on the airplane. So you want to make sure that whatever you're carrying with, you know it's there, and be very careful because tubes get left places. And if you have a tube, make sure it's labeled, because if you're putting them down on the floor with everybody else's, it'll get lost in a poster session. And that was the one thing when I traveled from here to California, I made sure I got not a black roll, but a yellow one. So when I left it somewhere in the airport, I could find it because there's nothing worse going to a conference and your poster not making it there. So printable is, obviously the easiest. The other thing is many conferences, and most of them, want you to send a digital image as part of your abstract for their final documentation in their programming. Be sure to double check the format of that as well. Usually it has to be PDF, but be sure when you save that image that it actually, when you open it, it does look like the poster you created. Because we know in some of these files, when you save them down and reopen them, they don't look the same. So then you wind up having this really wonky looking poster, and many of them were going to print your poster in a small PDF version within their programming. If you go to Sigma, that's one of the things that they do for their international conferences is they actually have all the posters in pictures in the back of their programs when they send it to you at the end of the conference. So you want to make sure that it's legible. So make sure you double check it. Kind of like we tell our students, when you upload stuff, double check that it uploaded correctly. Same thing for this, because you don't want to look bad when you get there. So next slide for me, please. The other thing is when you go to present this poster, let the poster talk for you. Many times your posters are hanging up. Don't stand right in front of your poster. Stand off to the side so that people can see what you're talking about, and then kind of draw people in when you're talking about things. So like Ashley said, pictures and graphics, make them useful and give information. So if for some reason you left some information off your poster, you may have to talk it through with people, but make sure whatever you're talking about, you use an elevator speech. You don't give them a long dissertation because no one's going to listen. If you can't explain your poster, and usually within 3 to 5 minutes, no one's going to stand there long enough to do that. So you want to make sure that things are there to be seen. And of course, you know, if somebody were to say, hey, that's your research, what are the things you take that you're taking away? And in the slide, it says to summarize 2 things. Absolutely have, what do you want people to take away from what you're sharing? Because not everybody likes the topic you're researching, but they find it interesting because it's different. And especially if it's a method that they don't like. I'm a quantitative person. I'm a numbers girl. So I always have tons of data, but I have a colleague that she's absolutely a qualitative person, and there's always really pretty pictures, and those drive me crazy, but together we're pretty good. So when we go to conferences, we try to look at each other's slides, because I'm like, I don't like to go to those, but I do like to look, right? So you want to make sure that whatever method you're using, that it's nice for somebody who doesn't necessarily appreciate that method, right? So that they'll come and look at it, because there's something to be said about numbers. There's something to be said about, you know, touchy-feely emotional stuff that's on a poster, but you want to make sure that it's balanced. And I think it's kind of fun because I'm learning that. I'm like, all right, I have a new appreciation for that at this point. But I didn't really think about it with the first couple posters I ever did, but it does become important, because you will have people who are engaged if they think your poster is something that they could try or use. The last time I went to Sigma, I did a poster on dedicated education units, and we just put some pictures of our students and what we did. And it really was kind of really a fluffy poster, for lack of a better word, but it was a poster that got lots of conversation. We had people that came from all over the world that had conversations about, oh, we want to do this. How can we do it? And so some of the pictures we shared and just some of the numbers was enough for them to go back and try it themselves. So we kind of tried to blend it. So make sure when you're doing your poster to know what's on it, and then make sure you want to share it without having any challenges to be able to explain it. There's nothing worse than sending your poster and maybe you're not the primary in the research and you can't explain what's on the poster. I think when I've done poster review and I've actually been like, oh, this is a great poster, but the person couldn't answer the questions about the poster. And that's always kind of a big deal, because you don't want to look like I just came around for the presentation. I really didn't do the work, right? So you want to make sure that you can explain everything that's on there for anybody who comes. So this is a great time to brag about yourself, right? It's a brag board. So make sure that it looks like what you want it to do, which is always a good thing. And I think Ashley,
add a small caveat to that about talking about yourself. We did have a situation sometimes at these student poster events where the faculty is talking instead of the student. And I find that really, really disturbing sometimes. I don't know the best way to put that, but really importantly that the student is presenting at these presentations and not their faculty members for them. So that's just something to throw out there, especially when you're coming to judging posters. We look for the fact that the student is able to explain the research, not that the faculty member is explaining for the student. That's something really super important.
That's I think the next slide is this one for you, Ashley, I think, for judging.
That's a nice segue into what I'm saying when you're looking at
Yes.
poster judging, because I'm a notorious poster judger. I'm sure everyone has seen me. I wander around and I don't always actually talk to the students because I'm looking at their posters first, because I want to see what draws me in. And at the same time, if you're given a rubric, follow the rubric. If the rubric has specific criteria that you're supposed to have on your poster, please make sure you have that criteria. And when I was looking at what Lynn was saying about the sizes of the posters, right? There's been times when I've gone to poster judging events and looked at the posters, and everybody's got great 2x6, 2x8 posters. And I'll walk up to one poster that's basically on legal print, right? It's on a legal size piece of paper. That's too small for us to be able to judge. Or when we're looking at a poster and it's not actually the research that was matching what the abstract that was submitted. And that's something that we've already talked about in this presentation, that if you're submitted an abstract, make sure that the research that you're actually presenting is the abstract that you submitted, right? Sometimes the things don't make sense. And I'm trying to sit there trying to put the pieces together, and I don't need to speak to the student because honestly, none of it makes sense, right? And sometimes when I talk to the students and they don't know why they don't match, that kind of helps me think that their boss or their mentor did it for them instead of the student themselves. Really, the goal is to have students present and really let their creativity and themselves shine. We want you to, this is your bragging platform. You know, you've already won by being chosen and selected to have a poster, right? Take advantage of that, celebrate that little bit of accomplishment, because there's lots of people that don't get accepted, that don't get the opportunity to present. And that's something that's so important and part of your growth as an educator and as a researcher. And really highlight the fact nursing relevance, because sometimes we get posters at these events that have no relevance to nursing. And while we are very multidisciplinary accepting, and we love having people of multiple disciplines at a nursing conference, it's still a nursing conference. So please make sure that your relevancy is to nursing practice, not to other disciplines, which is something that has unfortunately happened before and in the student presentations. All right, and practice your presentation. Present to everyone from your dog to your best friend, to your significant other, to your professor. Practice the presentation. Deliver your little elevator speech to everyone who will listen to you. So that way, when it comes down to it, and so you get approached by a judge, and you may not always know who a judge is. I've kind of put myself out there, but most of the time I try to fly underneath the radar, and they don't even know that I'm judging them, right? And you may not know who the judge is, right? And the person that might be most engaged in your research is not somebody that's actually going to be judging you for that poster contest, right? And in a good judge, they won't let you know that you're judging you because they don't want you to put on a tap dance in a show. I want to see your research speak. Next slide, because I think we're running out of time. This is just a quick summary. Again, this idea of planning early. I know that some of them have the poster where you have to submit online with the USB and that kind of thing. But if you do have to print, look at your print deadlines well in advance. Sometimes you've got print deadlines that you've got to get it submitted 12 weeks before the conference. All right, which means that if you've got to get it 12 weeks before the conference, you got to get it in now. Right? Like we're very, very close to this conference. And if you've got that kind of print deadline on them, you might be forced to be getting your own poster printed. So make sure that you double check those print deadlines at your university. Don't expect to be done with your poster and have them printed in 24 hours for you to fly on a plane with it, because it's not going to happen, right? Most of the time we do have poster deadlines that we have to reach. All right, make sure that you're focusing on clarity and storytelling. If something is missing off your poster, as long as you've got the main ingredients on there, most of us are going to be willing to ask the question. And sometimes it's good to give little details off of there because then we ask you questions, right? You don't have to have everything, but we do have to have the gist of your story just from looking at your poster. All right. And use your resources. If you've got help available to you, if you've got someone at your university that is a poster queen, wins all kinds of awards, wins all kinds of competitions, presents all the time, goes to so many events, ask them for help. And that said, we'll see you guys in Austin.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to running into some of you during the poster session. Any final questions? Well, thank you so much for your time and attention, and everybody have a fantastic day.
Thank you.